Hello. Yeah. First, let's briefly discuss about alternation in generation. Yesterday in the class, I've told you about alternation in generation. What exactly does that mean? Anybody in the class? What is alternation in generation? Yeah, a plant, for it to complete its life cycle, it has to undergo and pass through two cycles. One phase is called gametophytic phase. The other phase is called as sporophytic phase. I've told you a trick. Haga, Haga, followed by disc. Haga. In Haga, Ha indicates haploid and Ga indicates gametophyte. Di indicates diploid, which means 2N, and Spo indicates sporophyte. That means, so what is a gametophyte and what is a sporophyte? First of all, gametophyte is the phase of the plant which is producing gametes. Try to remember it in this way. Gametophyte will produce gametes, sporophyte will produce spores, right? We have already completed the life cycle of algae and I've told you what exactly it is. Haploid, diploid or haplodiploid. Haplontic life cycle. Majority of the algae shows which kind of life cycle? Haplontic life cycle. On cards, this haplontic life cycle looks something like this. We're starting from a spore. The spore will always germinate. Remember, gametes always fuse, spores always germinate. Did I tell you this line yesterday? Right? I'm pretty sure it must be in your notebooks as well. So when a spore germinates, it will divide by mitosis into a multicellular body. This multicellular body is gametophyte. This gametophyte will fulfill its entire life cycle, and at the end, when it reaches the phase of reproduction, it undergoes a process called as gametogenesis. Gameto means gamete, genesis means generation. So it will produce some gametes out. Now, spores always germinate, gametes always, come on, gametes always fuse. Both the gametes will be fused, known as syngamy, to produce a zygote. Zygote is the only cell which is diploid in nature. Zygote is the only cell to be found in algae which has diploid nature. But rest of the entire cycle is haploid. That's why we're calling it as a haplontic life cycle. Now, the special feature about algae is when the zygote is formed, it does not undergo mitosis. But in the rest of plants, what happens? When a zygote is formed, immediately it undergoes mitosis to produce a multicellular body. This multicellular body will bear flowers and their reproduction happens. Inside the flower, the sporophyte will begin. But in algae, what is happening? Immediately when the zygote is formed, meiosis is happening, releasing four different spores. Right down here, the special feature of algae is that zygotic, zygotic meiosis. Zygotic meiosis is the special feature which happens only in algae, basically only in haplontic life cycle plants. Now, are all the algae haplontic? I'm sure I've told you about some exceptions as well. There are some plants in algae which are haplodiplontic. There are some plants in algae which are diplontic. Neha, tell me the example of diplontic. Yes, fucus. And haplodiplontic is KEP, which includes kelp, ectocarpus, and Polysyphonia. Yeah, right. See, please don't be confused between these three plants, Porphyra, Polysyphonia, and Polytrichum. All the three plants starts with a P, but remember, Polytrichum is not an algae. Okay, Porphyra and Polysyphonia both are red algae. Right? Try to read or recall these both terms at the same time. Repeat: Porphyra and Polysyphonia. Polytrichum is not an algae. Right? Clear? Now we'll look at the other life cycles as well. In some advanced plants. In some advanced plants. What does the word advanced plant means? I'll tell you all the plants. Tell me which plants might be advanced. Algae, bryophytes, yes, you're right. Angiosperms. Remember from left to right. Left includes all the primitive plants, but the right hand corner, gymnosperms and angiosperms. These are advanced plants where you see diplontic life cycle. What do you see there? Diplontic life cycle, where majority of the plant is spending its life in the sporophytic phase and the gametophyte is reduced to very small region. Now there are some plants in between as well. Algae is haplontic, gymnosperm and angiosperms are diplontic. Are we missing some plants here? Bryophytes and pteridophytes. Bryophytes and pteridophytes are haplodiploid. 50% is gametophytic, 50% is sporophytic. Not exactly 50-50. Still in these plants there is a dominant phase and there is a recessive phase. We'll talk about it when we actually start to discuss about their life cycle. Is this clear? Did you understand the entire concept of this? Haplontic life cycle is seen in algae. Haplodiplontic life cycle is seen in bryophytes and pteridophytes, whereas complete diplontic life cycle is seen in gymnosperms and angiosperms. We'll do the questions later. Huh? Right. Yesterday we have discussed that how a Marchantia looks like. We've started with bryophytes. In bryophytes, there are two different classes. What are they? Marchantia, which is liverwort, yes, liverworts and mosses. In liverworts, there is one example which is Marchantia. We have studied about Marchantia life cycle. We'll revise it once again. And after that, we have seen that there are some advanced bryophytes as well. Marchantia is a primitive bryophyte because it is a liverwort. Again, the same logic from left to right. First, we are studying about liverworts, then we are studying about mosses. So, mosses are advanced, liverworts are primitive in the bryophyte section, right? Liverworts, basically the Marchantia, it is a dorso-ventrally flattened structure, right? This is the ventral side, this is the dorsal side, right? Dorso-ventrally, it is a flattened structure which is prostrate. There are two terms called as prostrate and erect. Prostrate means if this is the ground, suppositively if this is the ground, these plants lie like this, flattened on the ground. This is the ground. Where are these? These are prostrate. They grow, along the ground. There are some plants like mango and all. They grow upwards. We call them erect. These are prostrate, right? This is dorsoventrally flattened structure. We have talked about the reproduction as well. They can reproduce by three ways: vegetative, asexual, and sexual. First, vegetative reproduction in these beings happens by a way called as fragmentation, where a small piece will be chopped off, and now this small piece can go out and grow into another matured Marchantia. That is fragmentation. A single piece of plant, a small piece of it got broken off. Now this can grow separately, right? Asexually, they can reproduce by a small structure which is also green in color. These are gemma cups. Inside the gemma cups, there are small spores. These spores are called as gemma. These spores are called as gemma. When the plant wants to reproduce by asexual reproduction, these gemma cups and spores will be fallen off from the body, and when they reach some other region, from there, from the spore, another mature Marchantia will be developed. These are the two ways where it can reproduce by vegetative reproduction, is fragmentation, asexual reproduction by gemma. Now let's discuss about sexual reproduction. I'm trying to draw two different thaluses over here. Now why do you call this thallus, by the way? Why am I calling it as a thallus or thalloid? Absence of vascular bundles. Perfect. Because as these plants do not have a vascular bundles, that means they don't have a root system as well. You call a stem, a leaf, or a root only a root or a stem or leaf when it has vascular bundles. If there is a stem, it looks like a stem. If you want to call it like a stem, you have to cut it, you have to open it, and you have to find vascular bundles inside it. If you don't find these vascular bundles, what will you call them? You call them stem-like structures. If you cut the same root, if you don't find vascular bundles over there, what will you call them? Root-like structures, leaf-like structures, right? In Marchantia, there are some root-like structures. These are called as rhizoids. What are these? I'll appreciate if you draw the diagram as well. These are rhizoids. Now, the entire plant body is prostrate. Prostrate, what is the meaning of prostrate? Flattened structure, not exactly flattened. Flattened can be anything, but along the axis it is going like this. If it is erect, it will go upwards, right? There are small flower-like structures. They are not flowers. I'm not saying they are flowers. They are flower-like structures. This entire structure, which I'm drawing in white color, this entire structure is called as antheridiopore. The entire structure which I'm drawing here is called as antheridiopore. Why am I calling it as antheridiopore? Because this particular flower-like structure, which is disc shaped, at the corners of it, it contains a multicellular region. Where exactly? At the corners. It contains a multicellular region. This region is called as antheridium. We are calling the entire white color structure, the flower-like structure, as antheridiopore because it is carrying antheridium. Understood? Yes or no? Yes. Now coming to this particular body over here. Let me draw it in yellow. It also has a flower-like structure with tiny petal-like structures. Right? This entire structure is called as archegoniophore. What is it called as? Archegoniophore. Now, why am I calling it as archegoniophore? Same logic. This entire plant body is carrying antheridium. That's why I'm calling it as antheridiophore. This entire body should be carrying archegonium. That's why we're calling it as archegoniophore. Now, where exactly does this archegonium lie? Archegonium lies in between the petals, inverted towards the downshoot. It is a small flask-shaped structure. Which shape? Flask-shaped structure. At the bottom of the flask, at the bottom of the flask, you'll find an egg. And this is archegonium. Now, in this multicellular structure, antheridium is a multicellular structure. It is a multicellular structure inside the antheridium. Because of division, there will be production of a small cell. This cell is called as an antherozoid. Where are antherozoids produced? Inside the antherozoid. Now, in the medium of water, in the medium of water, this this is antherozoid, which is produced inside the antheridium. By using the medium of water, this entire structure will be transported through the water and it will reach the mouth of archegonium and it will fuse with the egg which is present at the base of archegonium. When two gametes fuse, what happens? Zygote will be formed. When sperm and egg fuses, there will be a formation of zygote. Now, how many flagella did I draw for this antherozoid? Write down. Antherozoids are biflagellated. Antherozoids are biflagellated. Inside the archegonium itself, the egg and sperm has fused together. Not this fellow. The sperm and egg has fused together to form a zygote. Now compare the same life cycle with algae ones. When the zygote is formed in algae, what happened? Zygotic meiosis happened. Immediately after formation of zygote, meiosis took place, which is reductional division. But here, mitosis happens. What happens? Mitosis leading to production of a small foot, a very a very small seta and a very tiny capsule. Is this a unicellular structure, food seta and capsule? It is a multicellular structure. This entire body is called as Bryophyte. So why did I call Bryophytes has haplodiplontic life cycle? Because entire plant body, majority of the life cycle is haploid only. But sporophyte is not restricted to a single cell. Sporophyte is multicellular. That's why we're calling it as haplodiplontic life cycle. Is this clear to everybody? Sure? అర్థమైందా? కొంచెం కొంచెం ఇదివరకు చదివా ఒకసారి ఇప్పుడు ఇది ఎప్పుడైనా ఫస్ట్ టైం కాదు. ఓకే, మళ్ళీ చెప్తాను కదండి. రైట్. Till now we have discussed about which life cycle? Marchantia's life cycle. Now we'll talk about a moss life cycle. Tell me the examples of moss. SPF, sphagnum, funaria. Let's try to discuss about the life cycle of funaria. Now, what does a capsule contain? What does a capsule contain? Spores, right? When a capsule bursts out, spores will be released. We'll start the funaria life cycle with a spore. There is a small tiny spore which has fallen, which has just come out from a capsule. From a capsule, when the capsule got burst, a small spore has been released outside. This spore will okay, go under the ground and it will start to germinate. Remember clearly, when this body starts to germinate, it produces a small. What does it produce? It produces a structure called as protoneme. What is the structure? Have you heard the term protonema of moss? Yes or no? It it produces a structure called as protonema. This is primary protonema, which means directly from the spore it is being elongated. From this primary protonema, there will be production of secondary protonema. Secondary protonema is not directly being coming out from the cell, it is being erased from the primary protonema. Secondary protonema has a small lateral bud. What is this? There is a small lateral bud. From this lateral bud, a stem-like structure arises where several leaf-like bodies will be formed. Till here, we have seen the gametophyte. Because spore is haploid, right? Spores are always haploid because spores are being produced after meiosis. Spores are haploid. From the spore, when it germinated, primary protonema has arisen. From primary protonema, secondary protonema has arisen. From protonema, secondary protonema, there is a lateral bud which is arising. From that, there is this leafy stage. On top of the leaves, you will find antheridia and archegonia. Where are you finding this? On antheridia and archegonia. Remember and write down this point. Gametophyte in funaria is divided into two phases. The entire plant life cycle is already divided into two phases. One is sporophyte, the other is gametophyte. In funaria, the gametophyte is further divided into two more sites. One is protonema phase, which is lying above the ground or under the ground? Under the ground. Protonema is formed under the ground. From that, from the lateral bud, leafy stays will be arising. This entire part is called as a leafy stays. The leafy stays has antheridia and archegonia. Now what happens in antheridia? Yes, about these phases. Yeah, sure. The gametophyte in funaria is divided into two more parts. One is protonema stays, which I have drawn in the dark green color. The other is leafy stays. Protonema grows under the ground. Leafy stays grows above the ground. On leafy stays, you will find antheridia and archegonia. Now remember the life cycle of Marchantia. What happens inside the antheridia? Antherozoid will be produced. Yes or no? Inside the antheridia, antherozoid will be produced. It is produced over here, antherozoid. What happens at archegonia? Egg will be produced. Antheridia will travel from here and goes and fuses over here. When egg and this body together when they fuse, what happens? When antherozoid and egg fuses, when two gametes fuse, what will happen? Zygote will be formed. A zygote will be formed. A zygote will be formed. From this zygote, look at your NCRT diagram. First of all, in the NCRT, look at funaria. You'll find a small foot there. There is a foot. A very long seta and a big capsule. In your NCRT diagrams, everybody, can you find that structure? Funaria. Is it? See, this is gametophyte. On the underground part of the gametophyte, there are rhizoids, right? Yes? Rhizoids are coming from this protonema stage. Okay? From the protonema, this leafy stage has arrived. On leaves, you have antheridia and archegonia. From antheridia, biflagellate antherozoid has arose. It will go and fuse with the egg into production of a zygote. Is zygote immediately undergoing meiosis? Yes or no? Is zygote undergoing meiosis? Zygotic meiosis is only seen in algae. Is this an algae? No. Immediately after zygote formation, it is undergoing mitosis to produce fruit, seta, and finally capsule. Now compare the same life cycle with Marchantia and tell me, where is sporophyte over here? Here. Is it very big? Very tiny? Which means less number of cells? Now compare the same thing with here. Where is sporophyte? This entire body is sporophyte. Now tell me, which one is advanced? Funaria or Marchantia? Funaria. అర్థమైందా? ఇంగ్లీష్ చెప్తున్నా అర్థమవుతుందా? నిద్ర వస్తుంది. లేదు చెప్పండి. I can teach in Hindi as well. भाइयों बहनों, मैं हिंदी में भी पढ़ा सकता हूँ. चाहिए चाहिए ఒకటే వస్తుంది. Inside the capsule, meiosis happens, leading to production of several spores. When spore number is increased multiple times, the wall of the capsule out. The capsule wall will be broken, releasing a lot of spores outside. Now this spore will move, and it will come back over here. When a spore germinates, primary protonema, secondary protonema, from the lateral bud. What is this? Lateral bud. From the lateral bud of secondary protonema, this stage will be raised up. This is called as leafy stage. What is this? What is this? Protonema stage. On the leafy stage, antheridia and archegonia are there. Antheridia produces antherozoid, archegonia produces egg. Both of them fuse into production of a zygote. Zygote undergoes mitosis. Zygote undergoes mitosis, leading to production of a multicellular big sporophyte. Now this entire structure is diploid, right? Because it is a sporophyte. So capsule is also sporophyte. Inside the capsule, the cells are also sporophytic. They happen to undergo meiosis. Yes, they will undergo meiosis, leading to production of a lot of spores. Is this clear? Right. Some of the economic importances. Sphagnum is also called as peat moss. Sphagnum is also called as peat moss. Why? Sphagnum is called peat